First, we have Boblin's Rebellion. Boblin's Rebellion is made from phase shift games, and they're known for dropping cubes type games. They've made at least two of these games, a fantasy one and then a space one. This looks exactly like those, and in fact, there's some crossover rules of this where you can use some of the creatures in there. But this is not that. This is what we call an engine building game, where you're building a little engine of cards to accomplish things. Let me show you. In this game, there's going to be 4 decks of cards. Well, you can not use the heroes. That's kind of an extra module, but I always would. And you'll have 3 cards of each kind face up. Each player is going to have a board in front of you. There are 2 sides of the board. You can play with the more advanced side, which adds in trolls. That would be a pain in the neck to you. And you have your little goblins, and on your board, these little goblins are different types. So right now I have 2 sticklers. There's screamers, sparklers, stalkers, slingers, and stabbers, each with their own icon, and each you can have a certain number of them. On a player's turn, they're going to get a couple actions. One of the actions they can use is they can just add 3 more sticklers or 2 screamers to their supply. Another thing they can do is they can acquire a card. When you acquire cards, they have costs. Like this one here costs 2 sticklers, while the red one down here costs 1 slinger. So I don't have that one, so I could take that one, or I could go up here. This one costs me 1 screamer and 1 stickler. So I can decide which card I'm going to take. When you take a card, you'll put a cube here to show how many times you use that card. And on my turn, instead, as an action, instead of taking a card or getting more sticklers or screamers, I can use one of these. So this lets me turn anything here into 1 sparkler and 1 stickler. Or I can turn a stalker into one of anything and this. You always do the top one. So I can turn one of anything into those 2. And for part of the same action, I can also pay a stalker to get another sparkler and another slinger. So these kind of cards are usually going to let me do a conversion. This one here lets me just turn a stickler into a stabber or a stalker. And every time you use the card, you move this over. When it gets to the end, you put the card aside, but you get the reward. Here's a point, and here it just gives me this. Many of the cards are going to give you points of the red type, and these, again, same thing. I can use this. I can spend 1 sparkler and 1 of anything to get 2 points. I can use both the actions I have in my turn, instead of just taking 1 action, to get an additional 2 points. And this card can be used 3 times. So the gray cards are about building up and getting more things. The red cards are about getting victory points. The blue cards kind of give you special abilities. This one says whenever one of my neighbors gets a stabber, I can take a stabber or a victory point for each one. This one says whenever I get a stickler, I can get a stabber. And this one here says whenever one of my neighbors gets a gray card, I can get a victory point or take a sparkler. You're going to keep track of your victory points here, and as soon as someone gets to 27, you win. I mentioned the other side. As you get certain points on here, trolls will come, and they're going to block you from having things, but you have a chance to fight trolls off and get rid of them so that you can again use these different parts. That's how you play. I also mentioned those hero cards which you can discard, some cards that you finished already. The rules are actually a little confusing about that, but then they give you like a special ability for the rest of the game, and they're also worth some points. This is just a race for points. It's changing these goblins into those goblins into these goblins, and then changing those goblins into points. It works pretty well. It's hard to be super cohesive about it and build any kind of strategy. It's a very tactical game. That's the card that's available. That's what I get. It's hard to build a strong deck when you have 3 out there, and by the time it comes back to you, they may not be there. Also, as a very small side note, I don't like the faces on the one side. That matters for the dropping game. In this game, it's kind of annoying to try to put them face up or not. It doesn't really matter. I prefer the side with the trolls better. I think that adds a little bit of oomph to the game as you score points. You then have some negative things that you have to kind of overcome. But it's just a race for points. It's fun. It's silly. Sort of. I mean, the gameplay isn't silly, but the theme is kind of silly. And it's one I found to be enjoyable. Stalkers, stabbers, slingers, sparklers, and screamers. So you're trying to take over the dungeon with these goblins, and buying the 3 different types of cards and the friend cards kind of comes together in a little cohesive package. I think this is a game that looks different than it plays, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. because I think some people will buy this expecting one thing, and people who like engine building games might pass, but I found it enjoyable, a 7 out of 10.